Welcome down the April Fool's rabbit hole, friend. I originally absolutely believed this was April Fool's, but guess what? People on TikTok who know Christy Blanchard are confirming it. So unless Gypsy and Christy are trolling us all, which is totally possible, it's allegedly true that Gypsy Blanchard is getting back with her ex-fiance, Ken Urker. I'm going to talk to you all about it in this video. And not only that, but I have a video from Ken's mom talking about Gypsy and her son's relationship with Gypsy. Things are getting crazy. So who is Ken Urker? All right, so in April of 2019, news broke that Gypsy Rose and Ken Urker were dating while she was in prison and that they had gotten engaged. She was 27 years old at the time, and people in general were just kind of like, she's in love and she deserves to be happy, and this is someone who cares about her. But by August of the same year, August 2019, news broke that Gypsy Rose and Ken were no more. The statement that was given to E! News at that time goes like this. The two were planning to get married in January while Gypsy was still in prison, but they have now canceled those plans. Both Gypsy and Ken are heartbroken over the situation and still have nothing but love for each other. So that was August of 2019. But shortly thereafter, the breakup proved to be short-lived when the two swiftly got back together after calling off the engagement. And at that time, Christy Blanchard put out a statement to In Touch Weekly saying they are back together. The engagement is on, but they're taking things slow and want to keep their relationship as private as possible. They're still aiming for a 2020 wedding, but things can change, and if it changes, the rest will be kept private until they are ready for people to know. They are keeping their personal lives personal from here on out. And by 2020, the pair had broken up again. Okay. Now, when I spoke to some sources from the prison who were close to Gypsy, I spoke to someone who was a former inmate there. I spoke to Rachel Garlick, and I spoke to the fan of Gypsy's. I think we were calling him Peter or something on my show for a while. He had been in contact with Gypsy back and forth while she was in prison. They told me that Gypsy's falling out with Ken had to do with the TikTok scandal with Rachel Garlick, okay? That there were a lot of things going on between Ken and Gypsy, but one major issue was that Gypsy was messing around with these former inmates on TikTok, and they were trying to make some money off of social media. And it was getting Gypsy into trouble, and then she was getting punished. You know, she may not be able to communicate as much as she had before. Ken got kind of frustrated with the whole thing, and it sort of set off a series of events in which they finally had an ending breakup where they were no longer supposed to contact one another. There were also some issues with Ken because he had a past history of participating in criminal activity. And it would be difficult, Gypsy would have a hard time getting out of the prison and saying that she was going to go live with Ken because of his past history. In order to meet standards for parole, Gypsy needed to show that she had a place to go that was safe and free of anyone with a criminal past. So enter Ryan Anderson, who she ended up dating from prison and eventually marrying. She told the parole board that she would be living with him and that he was a safe and secure person with a good family, and it would be a good environment for her to get out of prison and go into. Just a few days ago, we had breaking news that Gypsy confirmed she was separated from Ryan. And now, news sources are exposing that Gypsy has been caught hanging out with Ken. They're actually at a tattoo parlor getting tattoos together, maybe, allegedly. Again, I thought this was a total April Fool's, and maybe it still is. But I can confirm that Gypsy has been friends with Ken on her social media for a while now. And not only that, but Ken's mother came forward recently and made a video talking about her love for Gypsy, her concern for her, and the fact that she didn't know what the future was going to hold for Ken and Gypsy. Let's take a listen.
Okay, so I suppose inquiring minds want to know. First off, of course, I'm my son's biggest advocate. Ken is a great guy, no doubt. I raised a good boy. I raised 2 good boys and 3 great daughters. Am I anti-Gypsy? No, I'm really not. I'm an older woman. I understand the bond of a mother and a child. I look deeper into people's mistakes. I've always been a very non-judgmental person. And do I think Gypsy did wrong? Yes, I do. I've met Gypsy, and guess what? She knows she did wrong too. If Gypsy could go back in time, she would do something different. But none of us can do that. I think all the hate is ridiculous. I think she got out of prison. She got on social media. What person isn't nowadays? Especially young people. I think that she got tripped up with some of her words, and man, did everyone pounce. Do I feel sorry for Nick Godejohn? I do. I feel sorry for him. Obviously, there's some mental illness there. He's autistic. But on top of being autistic and having mental illness, I think Nick possesses a true darkness. And for that, I don't know that I'd want to see Nick back on the street. Or if so, if he were back on the street, I'm not opposed to it. At least after receiving some real mental help. You know, let's go back to the bond of mother and child. And this is why my sympathy goes to Gypsy. None of y'all know. You talk about how she's so manipulative and how she learned from her mother. Well, a lot of that is true. She did. Because we all learn from our mother. Especially when it's a one-child situation and a single mom. You know, she didn't have her dad in her life like he would have wanted to be, but he was working. I'm not putting anything down on anyone, or putting anyone down, I should say. He was working man. He paid his child support. And, you know, back in those days, that made you father of the year. Trust me, I know. I raised five all by myself, and I didn't get child support. But, you know, a mother can manipulate. Especially, she had Gypsy since infant on. Okay, this was her daughter. And so, by the time Gypsy was 15, 16, and May could have or could not have been in on it, as people say, at that point, she was so controlled by her mother, she wouldn't have had a choice, you know? And then as she got older, as we do, as human beings do, our brain starts developing. We start having our urges. We start wanting our lives. Some rage had to set in on this girl. How could it not? How can anyone not expect some anger to come out of her when she would try to get away and her mother not just physically retained her, but mentally retained her as well? I've seen all the documentaries on Gypsy, learned some stuff past her getting out of prison, and I still just don't look at her like she's some evil monster. I think she was a victim. I think she chose the wrong way to get out of that situation. I think she partially paid for it. And for all you people saying, oh, she should have never gotten out of prison. I mean, personally, I don't think she should have gone to prison. You know, people have killed their captor many a times. And there's people who didn't. And people have killed their abuser. And there's people who didn't. And I don't know, because we'll never know, that Gypsy wouldn't be dead right now. You know, her mom loved that attention. And that poor, pitiful me. And as Gypsy was getting older and maybe wanting to explore her own life, I could very much see a possibility of her mother killing her. Again, I understand where people are coming from, but with age comes maturity. And as you can see, I got lots of maturity going on here. And I just want to say, give her a break. Give her some time. Let her go through her therapy. Let her let her heal, let her mind develop in a normal world, in a normal situation with loving people around her. I don't think Gypsy would ever do that again. I don't think she would ever in a million years reoffend. I think she is scared. I think she wants to learn. I wish nothing but the best for her. I hope that some part of her life can be happy, because let's face it, she went 23 years with a captor. I mean, that's what her mother was a captor, teaching her horrible things, teaching her disgusting, vile things, to 4 days of freedom with Nick, and then prison for 8.5 years. So, she's just now experiencing really what any of us would call the real world. And so who are we to jump on this poor girl because she said the wrong thing in one interview? And going back to, oh, she's a manipulator, she's a fraud, she doesn't consider herself a murderer. Well, how many people have told this girl that? Okay? How many people have told her, oh, what you did you weren't the real murderer. You weren't the one who did this. That was Nick. So of course she's going to get that dialect in her vernacular. That's only natural. I know Gypsy, and I know she inner reflects, and she feels horrible that she could not have come to a different solution. As far as my son is concerned, when he met her, it was not in a dating sense at all. He wrote her to say he had empathy for her. My children are like me. We have big hearts. And Ken is no exception. He has a big heart. And he became friends with her. He was never attracted to her in the beginning. It wasn't until he saw her in person, actually, that he was like, oh my God, I'm attracted to this girl. And he battled with that because he knew people thought he was a weirdo. And so he kept it very hush-hush and very private. And then when, her story was coming out, around the time the act was coming out, a lot of people reached out to him. A lot of big names. I'm not going to, no need to say them. But you all know who she's interviewed with. Don't think for a minute they didn't reach out to her and me. And, he really listened to that. He really did. He took that to heart. And he and I talked, and he said, Mom, I don't want to do anything to hurt her. She's been hurt so much in her life. What should I do? And, of course, I told him, you have to go with your gut. But she probably does need to get out and live her life and have some freedom, and then see where things go. Now, to all the, are they getting back together? Are they getting back together? First off, Gypsy is a married woman, okay? Now, no one can tell the future. I'm not psychic. I'd love to meet that Teresa chick, but I think she just talks to the dead. But I don't think the dead can tell us the future. But, as of right now, she's presumably a happily married woman, and I want her to stay that way. I want nothing but the best for this poor girl. She's had enough beatdowns and enough heartache for 5 lifetimes, for real. Let the girl have some happiness. In the future, Ken is, he's working, he's got a girlfriend, he's, living his life. I don't know what the future holds. No one does. But for right now, I will just say, Ken wants the best for Gypsy. I want the best for Gypsy. I think that, these people coming on and presuming the worst about her don't know her and are just nitpicking on each little word. And come on, guys, we can do better than that. We need to be about love and peace.
Wow, I find Ken's mom to be fairly genuine and sweet, very kind-hearted person. I wonder what's going to happen with these two. Is she going to end up going back to Ken? What will that look like for the parole board? But before But before I leave you with all of this, I just want to go into some information about Ken I exposed a while ago, but I want to show it to you again here in this video. When I was looking into the background of what happened between Ken and Gypsy, I found a series of messages posted on Facebook by Ken. The messages basically relay that Ken was really, really unhappy with Fancy Maselli. I've talked about Fancy on my show before. Fancy was connected to Christy Blanchard. She was kind of acting as an agent or maybe even a manager for Gypsy's career. She was out there doing PR for the family, and she was very close with Christy. She had a major falling out with Christy Blanchard and Gypsy. She's spoken about this extensively on her YouTube channel called The Good Wives Network, and Ken actually took to social media to badmouth the heck out of Fancy Maselli. He put it out there. He did not like her, and he felt that she was using and abusing Gypsy and her family. Let's take a look at those messages now. Ken Urker. I just wanted to share my opinion on Fancy. So here's the deal. Everything this lady Fancy posts is garbage. First and foremost, she is not a friend of the Blanchard family. She is not a spokesperson for the Blanchard family. She is not working with the Blanchard family. She has absolutely zero trust and zero cooperation with Gypsy herself. She claims that she has all this concern for her, all this care for her well-being, just wants the best for her. Yet her actions have spoken nothing but the contrary. Gypsy has asked you many times to leave it alone. She doesn't want it. She wants to let it go. Yet you ignore her and pursue your own selfish path. First of all, this woman has voiced ill opinion towards me, which is understandable since I have been in the way of her project for a while. Because I keep Gypsy away from it. Because I, unlike you, have done nothing but keep Gypsy's best interest at heart. Why are you rehashing the same story into the spotlight every 3 months? She gets targeted by other inmates and guards, and her wounds will never heal until she gets some rest from the media. But of course, that means nothing to her when she's trying to build her career from nothing into something. And honestly speaking, has this story not been told 1,000 times? How much more do we need to hear the story of Gypsy Rose? It's played out. I think Ken is really speaking for a lot of us here. It's done. Give it a rest. You don't have any ground-breaking new material that's going to drop any jaws. And the fact that she's working with people like Dawn Bowker, who have zero relation to anything, proves that. You're just into the gossip, the attention, nothing more, nothing less. I put my heart into watching Gypsy progress as far as she has, and treats her feelings and opinions with utmost importance. Because I have a genuine love for her and I only want to build her up and not take away from her. Again, she claims to have all this care for her, yet what have you ever done to show that? I'm missing a part here, but he says, do you know anything about her? Do you know what she's working on in school? What makes her laugh that day? What shows she's watching? Go over the last section of her GED to get her to the biggest education milestone of her life. Do you know who her friends are? Do you know how many certificates she has for classes that she's taken for self-improvement? No. You have zero involvement. You've never even visited her, so sit down. Above being Gypsy's fiance, I am her best friend, who cares solely about the progress she's making and watching her become the best woman she can be at heart. I'm not just some creep who calls her every night to ask what she's wearing. Khakis? You, on the other hand, have proven yourself to be what every other journalist, writer in her life has been. Another leech who wants to sink her claws into the Gypsy Rose story and use her for your own personal gain. You're no different than the rest of them. You get caught talking shit and putting words into Christy's mouth saying they're against me, which again is a complete bullshit. You're just wrapped up in your little Facebook drama and will say anything to get people on your side. What are you, a teenager? It doesn't end there. Recently, you threatened Gypsy with a lawyer and a lawsuit if she doesn't write a retraction letter, saying she violated her contract, saying she has to support by proxy. That is Fancy Michelle's project that she was working on about Gypsy Rose. A show that doesn't even exist? Get fucking real. Let me see this contract. You don't have a lawyer. You don't have a team. You don't have a fucking show. You've been at the same square the last 2 years. You have hardly any credentials. You're nobody. You have nothing. I challenge you and your team of misfits to come at me with your legal team, guns blazing. You try and dangle the possibility of money for her to get her to cooperate. We don't need your money. I'll provide for her, just as I have the last 2 years. The reason we use we when we talk to you is because we talk things out together as a team. We share opinions and come to a decision together. It's never one-sided. Nobody is pulling either into a direction by the wrist. We walk side by side. We support each other. You have no idea how much she's added to my life. She makes me a better person. She's moving forward, not backwards. And that's what she needs right now. Keep our names out of your mouth. You don't know us. You don't know the woman she's become over the last 4 years. You only know the before, and we're not keeping you in the family to see the after. Wow. So this is when Ken kind of had an explosion in a Facebook group where Fancy Maselli was doing all this dramatic stuff regarding Gypsy Rose. A lot of other people were playing into it. Christy Blanchard was allegedly, according to Fancy, very involved in all of this. And we see that Christy is still involved in talking to a lot of YouTubers. One of them is Ryan Lee. This is so interesting because Ryan was friends with Fancy Maselli. They were kind of doing all these shows together on TikTok and Facebook. If you watched my last video, you can learn more about this. But Ryan had a falling out with Fancy, and then Christy Blanchard showed up in Ryan's live, commenting here and there, bringing people over to her account to get to know more about what was going on with Christy and Gypsy. And now Ryan considers Christy a good friend and says they text every day. It's just gone crazy. And here's what Ryan has to say about Ken coming back into Gypsy's life.
This stuff is perfectly okay to be, putting out there or whatever. They went out in public. Somebody got a picture of them. That's on them. Okay, then again, she also said that Gypsy was in jail last week.
Okay, so here's Ryan on her TikTok. She's talking about another creator. Ryan is annoyed with other creators who also talk about Gypsy. Ryan feels like she is the one who is the best at talking about Gypsy right now because she does have the connection to Christy Blanchard. We're reliving the same drama all over again because this used to be Fancy, and before that it was Katie Joy, but there's always someone in social media who has some kind of a connection relationship with Christy Blanchard and is like the hot person of the moment who Christy is speaking to, and they will put out information and kind of be like, I'm the only one that can tell you the truth about what's going on here. So here's Ryan. She's talking about this other creator that she doesn't like. She feels the other creator, I think her name is Nina, is wrong about a lot of things. And she's kind of like, I'm right about everything because I'm in contact with Christy. And she goes on to confirm that, Gypsy and Ken got caught at a tattoo parlor together and there was a picture taken. So she's kind of confirming that this is true, unless this is one big April Fool's by Christy Blanchard, Ryan, and the whole lot of them.
But it's a big damn difference to post about things that have already been known. Look, if Gypsy had came on and she separated from her husband and then we all decided to make videos and comments and whatever, that'd have been fine. That'd have been fine. My problem is not that the stuff with Gypsy is being, talked about. That's what we do. I've done it. What I'm saying is not even allowing somebody to, break their own news just so you can get more followers and likes it's just sick to me. And
okay, just remember here, because this has got to be kind of hilarious to you. Ryan is the woman who went on TikTok and social media and did her own personal reenactment of Gypsy Rose killing her mother and said that she believes that that's how it actually happened, that Nick didn't do the crime and Gypsy did it. And she reenacted it with stabbing and all kinds of crazy shit. And it's in my last video if you want to go check that out. So just once again, people, we're all crazy. We're all crazy here. Especially Gypsy Rose. I can't believe that all this has happened in the past week. I guess we'll find out in the next couple of days if this was one big April Fool's. Would not surprise me if it is, because I believe this family just loves to stay in the limelight. Gypsy does too. This would really bring people into her new show, which is going to be coming out not too long from now. And, the girl wants to make the ching-ching, the bank. Now, I find it really interesting that Ryan recently went live on YouTube, and she was talking about how Christy Blanchard told her that they don't make very much money, that they have not made very much money from all of these docuseries. They don't have very much money. Now, if you look up online how much Gypsy Rose has made, it said that she's made over $1 million doing all of this, but allegedly Christy is saying that's not true. And I get it. I think that a lot of times numbers are either underinflated or overinflated. I've seen that when it just comes to YouTubers' salaries. So it's interesting to kind of think about what may be going on financially for her as well. There is so much to talk about. Thank you for joining me here tonight. I hope you'll join me again next time, friends, as we head down yet another rabbit hole.